Well, good afternoon. It is great to be back in the great state of Texas, the state of my birth, the state of many long, languid summers I spent in my grandmother's beautiful Victorian home in Calvert, Texas, for you Aggie fans, and the state to which I moved many jobs from California while I was at Hewlett-Packard. I appreciate very much that very gracious introduction, and I have to say that when people say, oh, you know, she's a problem solver and she was the first woman to lead a Fortune 50 company, they don't leave out all the tough stuff that led me to that point. You know, no one's life is smooth, and mine hasn't been either. And so I want to tell you just a little bit about my story, not because my story is so remarkable, but because my story is the American story. I was blessed to have a mother and dad who taught me very important lessons in life. By the way, my mother and dad met right here in Texas during World War II. But when I was 8 years old, my mother, who was my Sunday school teacher that year, gave all the kids in her Sunday school class, including me, a little plaque. And that plaque said, "What you are is God's gift to you. What you make of yourself is your gift to God." And I remember my mother and my father talking always about the fact that each one of us has gifts, and that our lives are defined by how many of our gifts we choose to use. My dad was a conservative law professor, and then a conservative law professor in places like Yale, Cornell, Stanford, a fighter, in other words. And he became one of the only conservative judges on the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. And so I learned from him how to fight for our principles, but make friends at the same time. I graduated from college with a degree in medieval history and philosophy. Why is it everyone laughs when I say that? Well, I'll tell you why you laugh, because you know that if you're a young woman graduating in the middle of a recession, which I was, with a degree in medieval history and philosophy, you are all dressed up with nowhere to go. So I went to law school, with apologies to the lawyers in the room. I hated law school. I quit after a single semester. And now I needed to earn a living, so I went to work full-time, doing what I had done part-time while I was working my way through college. I was a good secretary. I could type 87 words a minute. Thank goodness for whiteout. In any event, I went back to work full-time. I answered want ads, took the first job I was offered, which was to work as a receptionist, typing, filing, and answering the phones in a little 9-person firm. I have traveled all over the world. I have lived in many places of the world. I have done business all over the world. And I know that still, to this day, in 2014, it is only possible in the United States of America for a young woman to start out as a law school dropout, a medieval history and philosophy major, and a secretary, and become the CEO of the largest technology company in the world. That is only possible here. My husband started out as a tow truck driver in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and ultimately became a corporate executive at AT&T. He and I met in AT&T. We were married in the state of Virginia, the state to which we now have returned, where our daughter and granddaughters are. And his story, like all of our stories, is only possible here in America. I ran for office and remain politically active, and have been politically active in both the 2008 and the 2012 presidential campaigns, because I think ours was intended to be a citizen government. It is what by, for, and of the people mean. And while I applaud our wonderful public servants, I also know that we cannot simply leave politics to politicians. That as citizens, we have to be engaged in the issues. And whether we run for office or help others win office or simply stand up and advocate for those things we believe in, we must be actively engaged. And that's why it's so great to be here with all of you at ALEC. Because that's what you do. You stay engaged in the legislative process with ideas and policies that matter. But I also ran for office because I have 2 granddaughters, and I worry that they don't have the possibilities that I had. They don't even have the sense of possibility that I had. Today, in addition to other things, I chair 2 nonprofits. One is called Good 360. We are the largest product philanthropy organization in the world. We take excess inventory from corporations, and there is a lot, and instead of that excess inventory ending up in landfills, we distribute it to 37,000 charities around this country. I also chair Opportunity International, a Christian-based microfinance organization, the largest in the world. We have loaned $6 billion, created 10 million jobs, and we have done that $150 at a time. It is through those experiences, I've done that because I believe civil society is an incredibly important part of a well-functioning country. But it is through those experiences that I have had up-close and personal interaction with people who are not as fortunate as those of us in this dining room. And I know, just as my mother told me when I was 8 years old, that everyone has gifts. People are not poor because they lack ambition. People are not poor because they lack intellect. People are not poor because they lack a desire to build a better life for themselves and their families. I have seen women in particular in desperate and destitute circumstances who step up and build a better life for themselves and their families. People are poor because they don't have someone to take a chance on them, or because they lack tools or education or training, or because they don't have a job. I battled cancer at around the same time that I was running for office, and at the end of that battle, by the way, I just hit my 5-year mark. I feel fantastic. And at the end of that battle, we lost our younger daughter, Lori. When you go through profound experiences, painful experiences, and all of us have, there are also blessings. And the blessings that come in those painful, profound experiences are rediscovering the power of love, the solace of faith, being comforted by the compassion and kindness of so many people. So, after a lifetime of many different kinds of experience in business, in politics, in charitable work, all over the world, in good times and in bad, there are a couple things that I know, and I want to talk to you about a few of those. The first thing that I know is that human potential is the only limitless resource we have. And I have learned in the course of my life that every person has more potential than they realize. Every organization has more potential frequently than they realize. Every person, every life has potential. And every person should have the opportunity to live a life of purpose and dignity and meaning. People fail to fulfill their potential because, what I just said, they lack opportunity, or they lack tools or training or support. And that is why this idea that human potential is the one limitless resource we have, that human potential is something that everyone is gifted with, that is why this is the greatest country on the face of the earth, because we were founded on a visionary idea, and that visionary idea was that indeed it didn't matter who you were. It didn't matter where you came from. It didn't matter what you looked like or what your last name was. All that mattered was that you had potential and you have the right to fulfill your potential. That is what our founders meant when they said everyone has the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Human potential is actually the source of all problem solving. It is the source of all innovation. It is the source of all advancement. And so, as a nation which was founded on the principle that human potential is an inalienable right which comes from God, cannot be taken away by government, in a time when we know we have many problems, it's worth us thinking about what unlocks human potential and what crushes it. What unlocks it? Entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship. It's a fancy word for giving someone the opportunity to envision something new, to imagine something new, and to then take that idea and build a life around it. I have seen people in desperate and destitute circumstances who become entrepreneurs and who build a better life for themselves and their families. And indeed, our nation was built by entrepreneurs. That's how our country came to be the greatest and most powerful economy on the face of the earth. People built businesses. And so while big business is doing fine right now, we ought to be worried that entrepreneurs and small businesses are not doing so well, because it is those small businesses and those entrepreneurs that make this country go. The coffee shop, the dry cleaners, the restaurant, the taqueria, the lawn care company. These are the people that make America go. I got my start the way most Americans get their start, in a little company founded by entrepreneurs. So we should worry when the stats are these. More small businesses are failing and fewer are starting right now than in any time in the last 40+ years. We are now destroying more businesses than we are creating. Big business is doing just fine. Crony capitalism is alive and well. Why? Because big businesses can deal with big government bureaucratic complexity, but small businesses cannot. Imagine you are a woman, a single woman with 2 kids, and you've just gotten your cosmetology license and you are trying to open a hairdressing salon. It might take you 472 days to get through the permits, the regulations. And once you've gotten through them, you've got to deal with a tax code that's thousands of pages long. And guess what? You might just give up. Entrepreneurship unlocks human potential. What's another thing that unlocks human potential? Education. And what's the one thing that we know is more important to someone's education than anything else? A teacher. I became a medieval history and philosophy major, not because I was going to make a living that way, but because I had a great teacher. And every single one of us remember those great teachers that unlocked our potential, that got us so excited about something. And so we have to make sure that we reward the good teachers and we give parents the option, the choice to take their kids out of failing schools. A job unlocks potential. I tell young kids all the time, don't wait for the perfect job, just get a job. Because whatever job you have, you will learn something. You will learn something from the people around you. You will learn something about yourself. Learning skills, but also learning a sense of responsibility gives people a sense of self-respect and dignity. And so we believe that it is vital that a job program be part of a welfare program, not simply because we're trying to save money, but because we are trying to save lives. People need a job to unlock their potential. Freedom unlocks potential. The freedom to dream your own dreams, the freedom to make your own mistakes, the freedom to find your own way. The rule of law unlocks potential. Why? Because the rule of law protects the most vulnerable among us, and it holds accountable the most powerful among us. In other words, the rule of law levels the scales, balances the scales between those who have and those who have not. And perhaps the most important ingredient of all, leadership. Leadership unlocks potential. In fact, it is the highest calling of leadership, to unlock the potential of others. When I was that secretary, 2 men came to my office after about 6 months in that job, and they said, you know, we've been watching you, and we think you can do more than type and file. Do you want to learn something about what we do? That was my introduction to business, but it was also my introduction to leadership. Because they saw potential in me, I saw potential in myself. When I was a young woman climbing the corporate ladder, I thought a leader was someone who had a big office, a big title, a lot of power, a lot of perks, a big parking space. But guess what? There are plenty of people in the corner office who have never led a day in their lives, and we have one in the White House right now. Leadership is about changing the order of things. Leadership is about unlocking potential in others. And so now let's talk a moment about what crushes potential. Bureaucracies crush potential. Big bureaucratic programs crush potential of the people who work in them and the people they are intending to serve. Why? Because bureaucracies are rules-based, process-driven, hierarchical organizations, and the people who work in them get the message pretty quick. Keep your head down. Don't rock the boat. Don't make a decision. Send it up the chain. I have broken up bureaucracies. And by the way, bureaucracies also, if left to their own devices, forget who they serve, and they begin to turn upon themselves and serve their own internal purposes. What do we have in Washington, D.C.? A set of vast, unaccountable bureaucracies that get more and more and more money every year. And what is the result in any bureaucracy anywhere? Inefficiency at best, corruption at worst, and a complete disregard for where the money comes from or who they serve. And if you doubt that that is the inevitable result of bureaucracies, think about the tragedy that is going on in the Veterans Administration today. We are failing to serve our nation's heroes because a bureaucracy has turned in upon itself. And it is not an issue of money. And what is wrong with our system when we have to pass a law that says that people who aren't doing their job can be fired at the Veterans Administration? Really? That is an example of why we need fundamental reform in Washington, not tinkering around the edges. Yes, we need a balanced budget, because when you want to get a bureaucracy under control and get people to think differently, you don't cut their budgets by 1% or 2%. You cut their budgets by 10 or 15% and really get people to start thinking differently. But we also need fundamental reform in Washington, decentralized decision-making. Because what happens when decision makers are close to those they serve? They understand the problems of those they serve. They are held accountable by those they serve. They don't forget those they serve. You know, I have the great privilege of traveling all over the country, and have for the last 10 years, and talking to audiences. And what I know is that regardless of their political persuasion, Americans have a deep-seated sense of disquiet today. They know something isn't working anymore. And they know it because they don't feel as though this is a country of limitless potential anymore. They know something's wrong because they don't feel limitless potential in their own lives. They look on their main streets and in their communities, and they see people just making ends meet, living paycheck to paycheck. They don't see people getting out there and taking risk. Big government, big labor, and big business are all doing fine right now. But Main Street, not doing so well. And what's the impact of this administration's liberal policies? By the way, California is the test case. If you want to know what liberals really believe, they really believe that they know better than everyone else, and they are willing to sacrifice other people's lives and livelihoods at the altar of their ideology, and California is case number one. Highest poverty rates in the world. Most number of welfare recipients in the world, in the country. Not highest poverty rates in the world, highest poverty rates in this country. highest income inequality in this country, and it is true that the impact right now of this administration's policies, high rates of youth unemployment, huge rates of African American unemployment, poverty rates that are higher than they've been in decades. And let's talk about women for just a moment, because I've launched a new effort to engage women at the grassroots in 6 tough states where women's votes are going to make a difference. The Democrats say we are waging a war on women. Now, I am a proud pro-life conservative, and I recognize that not every woman agrees with me, but we are not waging a war on women because we believe abortion at 5 months is inhumane to mother and child. Who is waging a war on women? This administration's policies are. Women are not denied access to abortion or birth control, but women are losing access to their doctors and their hospitals through Obamacare. Women are losing access to opportunity. The women's participation rate in the labor force is the lowest it has been in 40+ years. Unemployment is too high for everyone. Women who live outside, who work outside the home are taking a real beating. We're all happy with the latest job reports, but underneath the covers you see since May alone, 280,000 more women have dropped out of the labor force. I said that I sense across this country a feeling of disquiet. People know, regardless of their political persuasion, people know that Washington isn't working for them anymore. They see dysfunction day after day after day. They know that what's missing now in this country is a sense of possibility. And so I believe it is time. I believe it is time to realize that all of our nation's wounds, and we have plenty, but all of our wounds are self-inflicted. It is time to realize that we have all the human potential we need in men and women to solve our problems, to heal our wounds, and to allow every American the opportunity to fulfill their potential. What we now need are different policies and different leaders. We have all the potential we need to solve our problems. The highest calling of leadership is to change the order of things and unlock potential of others. And so it is time, I believe, to declare without apology or equivocation that this is the greatest nation in the history of the world and on the face of the earth today, and yes, the world needs American leadership. Here, everyone deserves a chance to achieve their aspirations. Everyone deserves a chance to dream their own dream and find their gifts and use their potential to fulfill their dream. It is time to declare the end of identity politics, of lowered expectations. So, thank you for gathering here to talk about the policies and the ideas that can unlock potential in others. I believe we must, as citizens of this great nation, decide together to change the order of things. I believe it is time for us together to decide that the highest calling of leadership is to unlock the potential of this great nation. It is time to lead. Thank you so very much. Thank you. God bless you all. And God bless the United States of America and the great state of Texas. Thank you.